Hello, and welcome to week 2 of the Unity JavaScript tutorial for AIM students. This week, we're going to talk about how to put text on the GUI, or Graphical User Interface, in Unity, so that when a player enters your game, they're going to be able to see something written on the camera. Now, I know that this past week you probably haven't been worrying yourself silly about JavaScript, so what we're going to do is we're going to review what we did last week, go over where you can get the project that we worked on last week, and we're going to go through the research process of how to figure out how to do something in JavaScript. Might sound a little daunting, but it's going to take about 2 minutes, and then you're going to see how we're going to apply it. It's going to be very easy. So, first thing is, I'm going to show you where to get the project that we had last week. So I put it on the server, and just allow me to get on the server here. I'll show you where it is. It's in the MyShare folder, and it's called Unity JavaScript Tutorial. Blah, blah, blah. And then there are 3 things. First, there's an Introduction to Scripting video series, which Pablo gave to me a couple days ago. It's great stuff. It's just going to review the stuff that we did last week. It's all about the syntax of code and how to use an if statement and different things in object-oriented programming. The second thing that's in this folder is the project that we demonstrated all the things in last week, all the stuff about Sid the Q committing suicide, and how to use buttons and all that. And the third thing is the PowerPoint presentation that we gave last week. So what we're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to put it on your desktop so it'll load faster. And I actually already have mine on here, so I'm going to open it up in mine. Wonderful. You can go to the Assets folder. That's the easiest way to open a scene in Unity. So, and we'll open up the most recent scene that we used, which is called How to Translate. Alright. And whammo, we're in Unity. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to think about what we can do. What I think this project is really missing, like personally what I think would make it like a blockbuster, is that if we had some kind of instructions on the screen or some kind of narrative on the screen which should tell us all about how to play the game and what's happening. So one way we can figure this out is to sort of mess around in JavaScript and sort of use this help business, and that usually ends in frustration. And the other thing that we can do is go and look on the Unity website like we did last week, and we'll figure out how to do that from scratch. Okay? So let's just get on the internet here and see what we can find. Oh my god, my personal life! I saw my favorite website. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for something that will help us. Now in this case I'm going to give you a little bit of a vocabulary word, GUI, which I'm sure you know means Graphical User Interface. So what I'm searching for is text on the GUI Unity. And what comes up, oh my god, it's almost like I've done this before, is a reference from the Unity website on how to do this. Now what we have here is a lot of technical stuff, it looks like. We got a picture of what this thing does, and it will help us, but we don't really know what it means. So the most important thing is to try to figure out what exactly it is we're looking at. This is definitely telling us that it's possible for Unity to do what we want to do. It can display text of any font we want to import in screen coordinates. But, what is it? Oh, it says up here, we're looking in the reference manual, we're looking at a component of Unity. It's a rendering component, and it's called GUI text. Now, we'll look at all this later, but let's check in Unity to see if we have it. Let's see if we can find it. Find this thing. Is it a game object? Create other. Create other. GUI text. There it is. It's a component, so it should also be here. Right here. Now that we've found that, let's try adding it to our project. But we don't want to mess up the work we've already done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new scene. I'm going to create a copy of this new scene. I'm going to create a copy of number 7. I'm going to duplicate it, and we're going to rename it 8. Text on the GUI. Okay, now, in text on the GUI, as before, we had a first-person controller, which is who you're walking around with, the plane, which is what we're standing on, point of light, which is what allows us to see, and Sid the Lonely Cube, who will get depressed and jump off a cliff if we ask him to. Now, let's try adding a GUI text object. But before we do that, we have to think about how it's going to be seen. Because the thing is, the thing that's going to see it is the first-person controller, and more specifically, the main camera in the first-person controller. So let me try and add a GUI text object. Oh, it popped in, and it's not even part of the camera. Now, it seems logical at the moment, that we would have this GUI text object placed on the camera so that it would just appear on our screen. But it looks like that's not the way it works. But before we can get into that, let's just look at what it's added. So it appears to be an object, just like all these other things, and it appears to have some variables that we can adjust. Even though we can't look at the whole JavaScript code, we can adjust these simple variables. So text, I can change that. Oh, and in real time it changes it. Okay, and anchor, let's change this around. Ooh, looks like it centers it or changes it around. Well, we can play with that later, but we just know that there are several different things we can do here. We can change the font, which apparently we have no fonts yet. We can change the material. What does all this mean? We don't know what this means yet. But if you look here, you can see that this almost perfectly matches this, right? So this is telling us everything about this GUI text object. So, if only there were some sample code or some kind of guide that could help us put code into our program and just play around with it. Luckily, in the Unity 3D website, they have a lot of these things called guides, Unity scripting guides. So right here, we have some code that can help us figure out how to use our GUI text object. So we can scroll down, we can see, ooh, that's a button, but we don't really want buttons. We want to use, let's look at controls. Let's see what we can control. Here's something we might want. Here's some text literally on the camera. Now, here's the code that does it. It says this is a label. It is non-interactive, so we can't click on it, can't do anything, and it looks like it probably can't change very much. But it's exactly what we're looking for. We just want to put a word on the camera. So let's see if we can copy that code. Gotcha. And go into Unity. And now what I want to do is I want to put that code in a script and put it on an object so that it will run when I play my program. So I can go to my script folder, which is right here, and I can create a JavaScript. I can create all these other scripts too, but we're just working in JavaScript for now. And I'm going to name it, I'm going to give it a good name because names are important. How about text on GUI? So now I have this text on GUI and I open it up. I have a little bit of silly code in there that just starts for us. But I'm going to paste my own code in there and save it. And then we'll get out of there and we'll take it. And where should we put it? We should put it, as you remember, on the main camera because that's what's going to see it. That's what we want to paste it on top of. Now, let's try playing it. Here we have kittens are the best in the center of the screen and a label in the top left. Now, that's really interesting because we just copied it in from here and it did the exact same thing it was supposed to. Now, if only we knew how to adjust this. Like, this is really interesting code, but what the heck does all this mean? Do we want, 30 kittens and 100 dogs? And is this 25 pies and 25 cookies? We don't know. So, one thing we could do is we could just take this GUI.label. Let's see if we can just take this and search for it in the internet. Let's see, GUI.label, let's see what it's got. Oh, here it is. We're going back to the website, same Unity website. Great. So let's just click on here. It'll take us to a different part and it'll tell us exactly what this will do. This is even more confusing possibly than the other stuff we've seen. But here we have the same thing we had before. And nothing's really jumping out to me as to what the exact definition of those numbers are. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Unity and we're going to use a sort of an older programming trick which is called messing around and not knowing what you're doing.